Putin.
War in Ukraine.
For Ukrainians.
With President Zelensky.
Russia and Ukraine are Ukrainian.
People there in Ukraine.
По данным аналитических центров, напряжение между Соединенными Штатами и Россией достигло высшей точки со времен Холодной войны. Государственный департамент США и вовсе заявил, что считают Россию главной угрозой и будет бороться с ней всеми возможными способами, но не своими, а чужими руками. Какие цели на самом деле преследуют США? Какой договор существует между американской политической элитой и корпорациями военно-промышленного комплекса? И чьи интересы обслуживает президент США Джо Байден?
If you had asked me in 1986, could I be friends with a Soviet? I'd have said no, because I was training to kill them, full time, 24/7. That was my life.
Scott Ritter from Gainesville, Florida, was formerly an intelligence officer in the U.S. Marine Corps. Between 1991 and 1998, he served as a UN weapons inspector in Iraq.
I studied the Soviets, and my whole job was to figure out how we could close with and destroy them through firepower maneuver on a field of battle. My job wasn't to be friends with the Soviets. My job was to know the Soviets, understand the Soviets, so that I could better kill the Soviets. I'm a loyal American, and now I'm being attacked by my government for being honest, for being truthful, for doing my job.
In 2003, after speaking at an international journalist symposium at the University of Tokyo, Scott Ritter gained worldwide fame.
The United States doesn't want Iraq disarmed. The United States wants Saddam Hussein gone. Colin Powell, making this presentation, he's not going to make a clear-cut case that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. The purpose of Colin Powell's presentation tomorrow is to destroy international trust and confidence in weapons inspections, and that's a darn shame.
Today, the former Marine and UN weapons inspector is a pariah in his own country because he was bold enough to tell the truth about the US government's true intentions.
And that once I had done what I had done, to tell the truth, to behave what I believed to be honorably, I was forever marked by my government to be harassed, to be attacked, to be destroyed. And I've just been disappointed with the U.S. government. And that's the point where the United States said, we're going to destroy Scott Ritter. My father was a career military officer. He spent 26 years in the Air Force. I was raised as a military family. All I knew growing up was the military life. We moved every 2 years to a different place. We lived in Hawaii, then we moved to Turkey and then to Germany. Where we lived in Germany, the first village we lived in, there were military exercises. So every day when I'd go to school on a bus, there'd be tanks driving by. There'd be aircraft flying over, helicopters flying over as they trained to defend against a Soviet attack. Where we lived, we were also next door to a nuclear weapons depot where American nuclear weapons were stored.
Поясните мне, пожалуйста, а сколько примерно баз находится в Германии?
Порядка, наверное, 45 баз Соединенных Штатов там по всей стране. Из них есть несколько очень больших. Это базы, где хранится ядерное оружие. Рядом с Франкфуртом она находится. Есть база ВВС, огромная база ВВС. Есть база сухопутная.
The Cold War was real. I decided I was going to be an officer in the Marine Corps, so I went to college. One of the teachings of Sun Tzu is to know your enemy as yourself. I decided that I would study Russian history and I would study the Russian language to know my enemy. And so I did. And when I graduated in May of 1984, I was commissioned in the United States Marine Corps, and I began my service.
We have 800 military bases, more by a huge amount than all the other countries combined in terms of foreign military bases, you know. Why do we have that?
Daniel Kovalik is an American human rights lawyer, journalist, and expert on U.S. foreign policy. He wrote The Plot to Scapegoat Russia, how the CIA and the deep state have conspired to vilify Russia, which has become a global sensation. In early 2023, he was fired from the University of Pittsburgh, where he taught, for his anti-American sentiments.
When I was 19, I went to Nicaragua, and this was during the war when the U.S. was supporting a war against Nicaragua. And I was very upset by this war. And when I went there, I became more upset. I realized we were being lied to. That the purpose of the war there was not to fight communism or to fight the Soviet Union. It was to keep Nicaragua down and under the control of the U.S. That was what it was about. So, yeah, so that was probably when I really changed sides in a certain way, you know.
John Viroli is an American journalist and analyst. He has written over 3,000 articles for Transitions, the New York Times, the International Herald Tribune, Bloomberg News, and the Art newspaper.
But going back, let's focus on some of the major armed conflicts that the United States has had since 1945. I mean, the worst example, the most notorious example is Vietnam. You know, we killed 4 million civilians, both North and South Vietnamese died in that conflict. Over the course of 15 years, 4 million civilians. Another million North Vietnamese soldiers died.
And with Ukraine, look at the lies that are told every day, or omissions, lying by omission.
The United States is always ready and willing to be a partner in the cause of peace and security.
The US currently supplies Ukraine with APCs, tactical loitering munitions, manned portable anti-tank missile systems, towed howitzers, multiple rocket launchers, universal launchers, and surface-to-air missile systems.
Громкие заявления американских и европейских политиков напоминают сюжет из голливудских фильмов про супергероев. Сценарий все тот же. Они спасают Вселенную. А что же в жизни? О каком мире идет речь? И понимают ли жители Украины, что стали разменной монетой в очередной геополитической игре?
We Americans, we want to control the world. We really do. As far as the defense industry, I mean, they're happy to make money. They're happy. Any war is an opportunity for them to make more money.
In the case of Afghanistan, the United States left behind $50 billion in arms and in its race to get out of the country.
Gilbert Doctorow, Doctor of Philosophy, board member and European coordinator of the American Committee for East-West Accord, has written books on US-Russian relations.
They avoid the embarrassment of the scandal that would necessarily arise when you look at the categories of weapons and funds that have been dispatched to these countries. They don't want, in the case of Afghanistan, as soon as you look up close beyond what the BBC reporters would tell you, you would understand why there were so few casualties on the American side.
Well, if you notice, it happened 6 months after we pulled out of Afghanistan, right? So the Afghanistan war, the global war on terror, ended. Now we need a new business project. Oh, there's a conflict in Ukraine. Let's make this conflict in Ukraine into a big conflict. Let's attack Donbass and let's provoke Moscow. Ukraine and Ukrainians, they're just cannon fodder. Absolutely nobody in Washington, nobody cares about Ukraine. They do not care about the Ukrainian people, not at all.
Противник применил РСЗО М-142 «Хаймерс», использовал ракеты осколочно-фугасные М-31. Всего противников было выпущено 3 ракеты.
Pierre-Emmanuel Thomas, French political scientist, PhD, geopolitics advisor at the European Institute of International Relations in Brussels. In September 2022, he represented France as an observer at the referendum in the Lugansk People's Republic.
The very important question in this conflict in Ukraine is the delivery of weapons by Western powers. We can see that military power and the military-industrial complex in the United States is one of the major actors in all the conflicts since the Cold War till now. The Cold War, the moment where United States were leading the world, it was a unipolar world. They continued to spend a lot of money in military-industrial complex, and also with the different crises and intervention in the United States, it was also an opportunity to continue to spend about weapons industry.
Some 50 countries have stepped up to help Ukraine defend itself and deter future threats.
Allt det här har vi gått igenom väldigt noga när vi landade i dagens beslut. Tre delar i dagens stödpaket. Samarbete mellan Sverige och Ukraina om upphandlingar av försvarsmaterial som ger Ukraina större möjligheter, vi återkommer till det. Avancerade stridsfordon från Sverige och pansarvärnsrobotar och det första beslutet för att påbörja leverans av Archer, artillerisystemet Archer till Ukraina.
Институт экономики Киля приводит такие цифры. Общий совокупный объем помощи, который включает в себя и военную помощь, и финансовую помощь, а также расходы на беженцев, он где-то составлял к январю 2023 года порядка 125 миллиардов евро. Недавно в Bloomberg было опубликовано исследование, согласно которому порядка 4000 единиц различной военной техники было передано США и странами Запада на Украину.
The U.S. empire is a disaster. You know, for the world it is. I mean, it's proven that, you know. And we're seeing that now, frankly, with what's happening in Ukraine.
Did you research about military corporations, how they benefit from all these wars?
Yeah, of course. I mean, they are making billions and billions of dollars on these wars. On the war in Yemen, that no one talks about, that's created the worst humanitarian crisis on earth. Of course, the war to Ukraine.
Пострадал спортивный зал, актовый зал, учебные кабинеты. В общем, детям учиться практически негде.
The future weapons industry production will give huge benefits to the American companies who produce weapons like Boeing, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, Raytheon.
The top 5 most profitable U.S. defense corporations in 2022 were Raytheon Technologies, with $67 billion in revenue, Boeing with more than $66 billion, Lockheed Martin with about $66 billion, General Dynamics with $39 billion, and Northrop Grumman with $36 billion in revenue.
All these big companies are pushing also the American government to have an offensive position on Ukraine, to support Ukraine, and through intense lobbying in the American Congress, they convince politicians to spend more about the military budget, and we can estimate there will be maybe until 1,000 billion of dollars spending in the next 10 years for weapons industry.
This helps reinforce America's control over all NATO countries. Including Germany and Poland, and helps to destroy the native military facilities and military production in Europe, which is an obvious plus for the United States.
France also announced a significant donation of AMX-10 light tanks. And many European countries have announced their own training initiatives as a part of the EU's military assistance mission to Ukraine.
Xavier Moreau, independent analyst and businessman, graduated from the École Spéciale Militaire de Saint-Cyr, served in the French Army from 1996 to 1999, was a captain in the 1st Parachute Regiment of France. From 2010 to 2014, he worked in the French military-industrial complex. He's written the book, The New Great Russia and Ukraine, How France Got It Wrong.
And the problem is that we don't send, some reserves. We don't send something we built for Ukraine or for other countries. We send our own reserves, our own equipment we are using now in the French army. For instance, the César.
They don't have their own balancing position anymore. And also they risk to lose their own national military-industrial complex because the pressure of the United States to export its own military hardware will be huge in Europe. And France and Germany, their own military-industrial complex will be in danger.
Yeah, because we have some part of our military equipment we buy in United States. The most critical, in my opinion, is for our aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle. The system who allow us to make the planes taking off is completely US made. When we refused in 2003 to participate to the war against Iraq, we received some threat from the United States. From the United States about that. And the same time, the same kind of problem, for instance, in our fighter, the Rafale, we started to get some success. Some years ago, we started to sell it in, for instance, in Egypt. And for United States, they were quite disappointed. So they started to threat us not to provide the parts that depend on them.
We must make good on our commitment to back Ukraine until it succeeds.
We can see that in the Congress, the American Congress, it's a huge ally of American military-industrial complex, because many Congress politicians, they support American military-industrial complex.
Тот факт, что если вы посмотрите, скажем, на ракеты, на другие системы, которые поставляют Соединенные Штаты Америки на Украину, то главным там числится фирма Райтеом. Вот она главный военный подрядчик, который обеспечивает значительную часть этой помощи Украине. А если мы посмотрим на биографию нынешнего министра обороны Ллойда Остина, то мы увидим, что на протяжении последних, по-моему, 10 лет он был главным лоббистом этой фирмы в Вашингтоне, поскольку он до самого последнего времени входил в состав совета директоров фирмы Райтеом.
Well, I mean, first of all, as is so common with U.S. regime change, wars, and so forth, it always starts with a false flag. I mean, that is their MO.
Mark Sloboda was born in Pennsylvania. He served on a U.S. Navy nuclear cruiser. Today, he's an international safety expert.
And it goes back to the blowing up the ship, the Maine, in harbor in Cuba to start the Spanish-American War, to the Gulf of Tonkin in Vietnam, to weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
But let's return to Scott Ritter. In the early 1990s, he was appointed a UN weapons inspector in Iraq. He represented the US in UNSCOM, the United Nations Special Commission.
And I was a very successful weapons inspector. Too successful. I got into a building that nobody thought I would ever get into. And I did a credible 16-hour inspection. And I felt that this would be appreciated. My first trip to Iraq was in December of 1991, after the Gulf War.
As a weapons inspector, Ritter was tasked to find out if Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. From 1991 to 1998, he conducted more than 30 inspections at Iraqi military facilities.
As a weapons inspector, we always flew into Baghdad, but then